Like, it is a job. And if you're at the point where you're not able to go to work because of your health and your relationship breakdown and your mental health is so bad that you're worried about how you could ever go back in there, don't go back in there. Like, as much as I don't want people leaving this industry, I don't want people leaving this world either.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession.
It's that thing of like procrastinating in all aspects of life. So like going like, I really should deal with that gambling addiction or that really bad type 1 diabetes or that, or that mental health problem. But there's 100 covers in tonight and like I still need to get prepped for that. So I better just focus on brunoising all those carrots. That'll help, and then you're essentially just leaving your problems outside, but they're not just sitting outside, they're doing press ups waiting for you. Do you know what I mean? So they're getting bigger, stronger, and you're getting weaker and more scared. And I think that becomes the revolving door of why people lean harder into the industry then. We all complain about how hard it is, which it is, but then I've stood in plenty of kitchens. I mean, especially with the machismo of kitchens, and this thing of like, for a very long time, they've essentially been building sites, excuse me talking about builders. It's this thing of like people coming in and being like, oh, what did you do last week? Oh, I did 70 hours. Oh, are you part-time? And it's like, why are we celebrating like how hard we're putting ourselves through all this? And why are we celebrating like, oh, wow, you did 80 hours last week? And nobody's going, yeah, that seems really unsustainable. Everyone's just going like, oh, geez, imagine the money you're going to get off that. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's like, it's become really toxic that way, where I think people are leaning into working more to avoid having to deal with the stuff that's either sitting at home or in their head. Do
you know what? That's such a profound thought, because we see that not just with front house and back house teams and general managers, etc., but I see that replicated in supply chain. I see that in C-suite level. But I think it's getting worse post-COVID. There's been this hangover, is probably not the correct word for it, pandemic coming through, where people are more acutely aware of the things that aren't sitting comfortably with themselves. But we've never been taught to be sitting with discomfort and to work through it. And as life goes on and more technology exists, you're actually encouraged to do anything you can do to stay away from discomfort and to feel good and to look good. And things like Ozempic and stuff coming out now, and people jabbing themselves. And then you've got this wave of individuals who aren't on Ozempic going, oh my God, they look so great. They look so healthy. I should look like that. I need to get Ozempic because now I don't look great. And you're like, what the fuck is going on right now? And it's people are using work. They're using drugs, both legal and illegal. They're using any coping mechanism other than actually addressing some of the root causes, because and again, I was chatting to a colleague about this the other day. That's an ongoing process as well. That's not just like I've spent a week working on myself and I've managed to fix that childhood trauma and I've managed to curb my enthusiasm for partying hard after a really stressful day, because it doesn't go away. It's constant evolution.
It's that thing, whether it be legal or illegal drugs or any of these things that we as an industry, both front and back of house and on a managerial level, I've seen it across the board. Like we fall into these traps, but like you say, the one common factor with a lot of them, the commonality in them all is this thing of like that immediate hit, like that immediate, it's like Saturday night service, 8:00. Somebody forgot to put on the 20 top covers, or whatever. Like there's 2 tables that weren't accounted for that are in the rest. That manicness, like there's like a search for that. And then that falls into like these categories, like you say, it's like, well, I can get an immediate relief off this, or like you say with those Ozempic, it's like I can immediately lose all this weight and immediately start to feel better about myself. And it's like, but that process that you would naturally have to go through, whether it's therapy or exercise or taking accountability for yourself and all those things, like that journey is how you fix it. It's like that, those stages and those steps that you go through is what strengthens you. Like I attend Gamblers Anonymous for a gambling addiction I have, and like the stages or the steps. If step 10 is, wow, you've completed it, it's the least important one. It's like 1 to 9 is where it all happens. That's where it's like when you're starting your career, for me anyway, in the kitchen, it was all those formative years create what you are now. And it's that same thing. And it's just like those things don't happen overnight. You don't go on Great British Menu overnight. You know what I mean? You don't do this overnight. It has to be a really long, hard slog.
Yeah. It's that development of character, isn't it? It's that development of resilience and skill set and experience and knowledge and behaviors, which I guess is also quite an interesting time for us, because now we come to this stage where the industry, like you say, is like mechanics and construction sites. We've worked like a certain way for such a long period of time. Now we've got to the stage where everyone's going, oh, but I've spent the last 20 years building all of this up to be effective, quote unquote. And now I'm at the stage where someone's telling me that actually that's not the right way of doing things, and that I need to now relearn everything again. And that's really hard for people to be able to try and adjust it. There was some feedback we had from a competition one of our ambassadors attended recently, and someone was wearing a burnt chef jacket, and one of the competitors was like, "Oh, what's the burnt chef project then?" And the guy was like, "Don't know, something to do with this mental health phase thingy." And I was like, "You can't wear our logo and then call something like this a phase. You guys need to be the ones actually taking the time to understand, all right, times are different, times have changed, what happened wasn't right, and now we have a responsibility to put it right, to fix it, rather than just dropping a grenade in the room and going, fuck it, I'm almost done now, so I'm out."
My big thing is I'm 35 this week. I'm 35 this week, but like I'm Gen something anyway. I'm not the oldest of old school. Like so I'm in that middle ground, and I'm going like, for me, I think that the conversations about mental health and about all these things are like super important on an industry scale, and then just on like a global, like in general. I mean, I'm from Northern Ireland. Like we don't talk about it. Like that's just what it is. Maybe crack a joke and we get on with it, and that's and that has forever and a day been the way it was. And I'm seeing such huge changes in that now, which is fantastic. But at the core, if we talk about our industry or the hospitality industry in general, at the core, it's about balancing this fantastically progressive new approach of like, are you okay? This is not okay. You shouldn't have to do this. You shouldn't be spoke to like this. You should be treated like this. Nobody should ever do this to you. Sexism doesn't belong in the kitchen. I completely agree with all of those. And then there comes a point in that conversation where everyone has to be reminded that, like, say, when it comes to people being shouted at or being denigrated and those kind of things and all, like that's absolutely not okay. But at a point, you have to remember, all of that aside, that if you remove all of that from the industry, this is still a really hard industry. And like you do need resilience for this industry. And we can put, and we will put, especially in my business, I put as many safeguarding practices in as I can, make people aware that they can go and speak to somebody on a management level or above, on an ownership level, if they have a concern or something like that. And that makes it better in our business, but it's still really hard. Like, it's still a really hard business to be in. It's like you can do all the therapy you want, but if you're a bricklayer, you're going to have sore arms at the end of the day. It's trying to marry the approach of like, we do need to like look after everybody, but everybody needs to come into this industry with the full understanding that you're working till really late at night. You're not seeing your family very much. I mean, everything that comes with it. I mean, I don't need to rhyme them all off, or else the entire podcast would just be me listing negatives of the industry, which I don't want to do. But it's like those things need to be understood. I see a lot of people talking about, like, if we could get some sort of like style of hospitality where, it like opens at this time and it closes at this time. So it's like, but it's not office work. Like, you're not going to run your business. You're not going to run a restaurant 9 to 5. Like, it's not going to work. Yeah. So it's just about having that thing where at an educational level, the kids going through the colleges and learning about hospitality, learning about front of house or back of house or whatever it is that they're interested in, is that they're put into real life situations, so they get a real taste of what that industry is like. Otherwise, they're going to get a real shock when they come out the other side of it, because you can have every safeguarding thing in place and people can still get burnt out from the hours. They can still get burnt out from the emotional exhaustion and all that stuff. So it's an interesting topic, but I do think you're 100% right what you're saying. To have somebody kind of, that's this mental health phase. It's like, like this has been a phase for millennia. We're just talking about it now, you know?
Yeah, there was a piece that I didn't attack. I'm quite a placid individual, so like I always sit on the fence and try and moderate my responses. But the Michelin Guide put out something, and they said something similar a couple of years ago about mental health thing being a phase, and it was, you know, just here for a little while. And I was like, as an organization who award businesses based on whatever the criteria is nowadays, who the fuck knows? They should also be taking a proactive step to acknowledge that we've all got health, so that's a bit naive to think it's a phase, but also celebrating the businesses that are looking after it well and are doing a good job in terms of self-care and, you know, empowering team members to be resilient, because as you say, it is a fucking tough industry. And I was chatting to a 3 Michelin star chef the other day. I won't name him. And he was saying that they do one service now. They do 40 covers. And he was like, I just don't get it. Like, it's so much easier than I had it, doing 3 covers a day, having to work 20 hours a day. And these guys, you know, these young 21, 22, 23-year-olds now, they might be struggling with social anxieties. They can't talk to the customers, or they might not have the same resilience. And I said, but that's your perspective. You were born in fire, and you got burnt and scolded, and you're all hideously disfigured because of you're mentally disfigured because of the time there. And you built up that resilience or that tough skin. But that's not to say that everyone has to go through that now in order to be able to perform well. But you can't expect people to come in and within 3 months be able to cope with the mental gymnastics, the time away from home, all of this other stuff. We have to take a longer tack to that now, which is, how do we empower these guys? How do we spend time training them? How do we find what areas that they want to grow, and what we can do as leaders to do that, rather than, and it almost changes the dynamics of the kitchen brigade, because all of a sudden you're not on the pass as the exec or the head chef or the chef patron. You're actually behind everything and just watching, guiding, supporting. And it's sort of taking a move away from, I have to be in control because this is all on my head, to how can I create a sustainable culture by supporting and imparting my knowledge, which is a really, again, it goes back to what we were saying originally, which is then you're not feeling that buzz, that chaotic nature. You're having to almost remove yourself from that side of things, which is also challenging, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember a time that I sat down and read through HR policy and been like, you know, it doesn't do it for me. Yeah, so you're 100% right. It's trying to find that inherently. I think the big struggle, like, so for me and my wife own the business together. I literally do the cooking, and Rebecca does every other aspect of the business. So I'm in a very advantageous position. Rebecca's not, but I am. But it's just this thing of like, my big struggle when we first started the business was, I want to cook. That's what I want to do. I want to cook food, put it on a plate, watch it go down to a table, see their eyes light up, hopefully. And like that's what I want. But that is such a small fraction of what it is to run a restaurant. And I think that's inherently where a lot of the culture issues start, is that like the ownership of these restaurants, a lot of people who own restaurants are either business people who are in it for the economics of the thing, or it's people who chefs or front of house. And so they're good at what they do. What they do is not necessarily managing people or nurturing people. And like you say, if they're coming from a historical background of like, my chef used to burn me with a spoon when I made a mistake, you know, or whatever it is, it's like, you can actually almost strip it back to like a family. If you have a family and potentially that, you know, the mother and father had a rough upbringing, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to completely 180 that and make sure that their kids never experience anything like that again, or they're going to fall into that trap. There is so many similarities with, well, I suppose we are a dysfunctional family in hospitality, so it is there, but it's like, so it's trying to like, do you break the generational curse of like, well, this is the way it's always been and it did me no harm? Because again, that's rose-tinted spectacles. These people are coming out with statements like, oh, you know, that's the way we were trained, and like it did us no harm. And you're like, are you forgetting all the harm it did you? Like, because like, you know, like you say, there's the scar tissue.
It's almost like the I've managed to get out of this now type situation. So it's no longer happening to me currently, but it was a rite of passage. And then looking back at it as a post, but at the time they were having to go through all that.
They hated it. Yeah.
Shit. And like for a significant proportion of your life as well. I mean, happy birthday, first and foremost, for this week. You're turning 35. But
Thank you.
how long have you been a chef for? And what have you had to go through to be able to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so both a positive and a negative. I used to be a car mechanic. So used to fix cars. That's what I used to do. And the running joke is I was tired of coming home stinking, covered in oil. So I became a chef and unwittingly come home stinking, covered in oil. So it's like, yeah, I swapped one for the other. So I started cooking about 10 and a half years ago. I couldn't boil an egg. My mother was a dinner lady for a short period of time in her life, but she was always a passionate home cook, and I loved eating food, but I never really connected with it. But when I was in school, I remember a teacher coming to me and saying, at home they call you by your last name, so young McCarry, everybody's got a creative side, which I totally disagreed with because I couldn't draw a picture, paint, and I couldn't play a note. Like I couldn't. Every instrument I tried was a abysmal failure. And so I kind of very quickly went like, well, that's not true. That's not true. Everybody doesn't have a creative side. And then when I did randomly fall into cooking, I left a sales job that I had and just walked into a kitchen just after our first child had been born, which was a really bad time to pick. Said I'd love to learn to cook. And this was before the chefing crisis of not being able to get chefs. So I did go in and start sort of at the bottom rung of the ladder and work my way up, didn't take the express route. And I just fell in love with it. I remember being in kitchens and you go in your first week. I love the nerves as well. I love the going in every morning, just half excited, half bricking it. Just not sure whether you were going to completely mess up service or what was going to happen. There was a real, and again, this is where I think it's probably where my first sort of taste of endorphins. This is all right. This is familiar. I'd done a bit of partying when I was younger, so it was I recognize this. This is This is a really cheap way to feel that way, isn't it? But I was working with these people and they were saying to me, oh, I've been doing this 10 years, blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of matching pace with them pretty quickly and going God, if I'd been doing this 10 years, I'd be way better than that.
So the competitive element.
Because they're burnt out already. They're 10 years in, and I'm there, fresh faced, asking them, why do we buy the pasta in? Why do we not make it? And they're looking at me they just
don't be that guy.
Yeah. Don't give them any ideas. So I was just really keen to learn more. And then I loved the fact that for me, when I actually started in hospitality, I was front of house. Years before, I'd sort of helped a family business run a coffee shop, and front of house for the first 3 years that I did it, I ate it up. I loved it. They used to send me down to the tables that were complaining. It was a challenge. I was little old Margaret or Dorothy is going to love me by the end of this. I'm gonna swing them around our favor. So the move into the kitchens, ironically for me, ended up being I wanted to go back into hospitality, but I didn't have the patience for the public anymore. So it was well, just put it behind the wall. That wall between the front and back of house, it's only about 3 inches wide, but it might as well be the Great Wall of China. It's massive psychologically. But food for me it was such a encyclopedia of a thing where every day you learn something new. You never ran out of things, with cars and stuff. Once you learn to fix a brake disc or whatever, that was like that for all the cars. It was the same thing. So you once you conquered it. And I needed constant little mile markers to tick, I've just learned how to do this, and this sauce here, I didn't know how to do that. And it really fed me. It made me feel, well, it was really tough. It made me feel like every day I was achieving success by cutting the chives perfectly or making the sauce right or cooking the fish. But, it was every day there was a little win that I was able to psychologically use to block out all the losses. So not seeing your newborn child all day long, barely seeing your wife, working ridiculous hours, all this stuff. I was coming home at 11 o'clock at night, God love Rebecca was here in the house, with the newborn child, and like exhausted, and I was like, oh, so right, and then the chef said to me to do this here, and then I went, and like she's just like, what's wrong with you? And then proceeding to sit on till, my younger years, I was a big fan of like smoking weed. That was my thing. Like, that was, you needed that after service to wind down. That was not the fact that you drank coffee up to 11 o'clock at night as well. So I had like a ritual that I would go through where I would work all those hours. I would come home, tell Rebecca about the whole day of what went on, blah, blah, and all this stuff and all. And then I would like sit and watch TV and eat rubbish and like garbage, like fill myself full of garbage after not eating all day, smoking joints. Thankfully, I didn't. Drinking wasn't a big thing for me ever. So yeah, just doing that there, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, do it all over again. And like, before I knew it, I'd done that for 10 and a half years. And I progressed through the kitchen really well, and I'd done all that stuff. But like, because my focal point was always on the career. Right. My oldest child is 11 this year, and her formative years are on my iPhone. They're not in my head, that they're stored in the cloud. And that was a sacrifice I had to make. And so very early on, I did acknowledge that. So very early on, I said, well, if I'm going to spend 14 hours in the kitchen, I'm going to bloody make it worth it. So I'm going to ask every question. I'm going to volunteer myself to do every shift. I'm going to figure out what's right and what's wrong in here. I'm going to do that. And that was a big part of why when I got to last year and I got asked to go on the Great British Menu, it was like, for me, that was like didn't make up for the years of missed time with the daughter, but it was reassurance that like you did apply yourself. You did apply yourself. You spent 10 years learning a trade and you learned it well enough that people wanted to see you do it. And that was huge for me from a mental health point of view as well. To I suppose this is me talking in hindsight now. At the time, it was absolutely horrible, but just huge to know that I was making steps in the right direction.
What do you think it was then? So I should also apologise and just say to our listeners, Stevie and I were chatting and having such fucking decent conversation that I just whacked record and didn't even say to him we were going live. So now we've sort of all into But now we missed like 5 minutes of, we were went deep quick talking about all stuff. So, but yeah, so I guess I'm going to go back to your work life. Working in kitchens and being structured and regimented and having service, doing your mise en place, knowing what time service times are, same time every single day. And then also coming home and having that almost like a routine, right, as well, whether it's going to the gym or sitting smoking weed and eating crap. What is it? Do you think the two are combined? Do you think that actually working in hospitality, specifically as a chef and running to service times, actually reinforces that structure of habits? Or is that something that you personality-wise always had?
I have the attention span of a flat. You name it, I've got it. I'm dyslexic, I'm dyspraxic. I've got so many different things going on that essentially mean that I'm fairly scatterbrained with everything. And in my outside of work life, I am chaotic. Like I have no structure to anything. But that's probably what made it so attractive, was that like I was forced into a checklist. I was forced into these things where it was like, I would write my mise en place out, and the first thing on my mise en place would be write your mise en place, so I could tick it straight away. Like it was like another dragon that I chased was the end of the list. It was like that was I would move mountains to get that list finished. And that is a robotic aspect to the business that I think attracts a lot of people, especially, and this is why we talk about hospitality being like we're all misfits. Like we're all sort of, we've all got our little idiosyncrasies that sort of make us maybe not fit into an office environment, or, we'd end up in HR every day or whatever it is, kind of thing. Yeah. We've got these little things about us. And I think that we all long for a taste of organizational structure and rules and restrictions. And, you work in a kitchen and it's like, you leave the kitchen, you come back in, you wash your hands, you do this, you wash your hands. It's very, not speaking from experience, thankfully, but it's very institutionalized. It's very like, it would remind you of one of Her Majesty's prisons. You know, it's very like you get up in the morning, you do this, you do that, you do this. You've got a uniform, you wear a uniform. Everything about it, I think, probably psychologically gives the people who do it anchors. It gives them things to like, I know what lies ahead of me, kind of thing. You know, and then that's why I think that in their personal life outside of work, it becomes quite manic. Is because they live in this world of like lists. For me anyway, personally, I know that's what it is that I live in this world of like, you know, orders have to be in for this time, the veg man needs this here. There's all of this stuff going on that it's almost like once you are out of that, which is why we're very rarely out of it, but once you're out of that on your day off, it's just white noise. You just don't really know what to do, you know?
It's so funny, isn't it? I say it's funny, it's hideous. Like it's kind of like the unspoken thing. We always talk about the stresses and pressures of working within the work environment and how we can tackle those. But there isn't much, and we mentioned it briefly before I hit records, but there isn't much conversation around actually what happens when all of that chaos stops and then you just have to sit there. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type situation, or if you have been in the forces, you're out in Civvy Street now and all of a sudden everything's moving a little less fast than it used to and a little less chaotic, and then actually you can't see any rhyme or reason to people's behavior or actions because that's not how you've spent the last 15 hours of your day. And that's really jarring. Like it's difficult to get accustomed to. It almost needs to be a rehabilitation program for people who've left the industry and are trying to get back into conventional quote unquote work.
Yeah, I mean, I see it when I worked for other people. I mean, even for ourselves, actually, now. I mean, like, you know, if we had a day off, like the invisible magnetic pull for me to just pop in to check on things. I'm only popping in to check on things. Fast forward 4 hours later, you know, and I'm going like, oh, you're ridiculous. I can't even have a day off and I have to be in here. And like the people around me, I'm almost certain are looking at me going like, you don't need to be here. Like, you know, it's that. I think there's an aspect of psychology where we all like, we're all the hero of our own story, you know. And I think like as much as I probably self-denigrate myself and that kind of thing, I think I do live with this belief that like, if I'm not there, it'll all go Pete Tong. Like, you know, if I'm not there, there'll be a problem. I think it's Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer has a book, I think, in it. He talks about becoming really unwell and having to go into hospital. And this is 11 Madison Park, I could be wrong, but and he essentially didn't hear from his staff for a couple of days and was going mad in the hospital bed. Like, I said, you know, what's going on? And then he got handed a newspaper and they'd been reviewed that weekend that he was off sick in the hospital, and it had been, you know, the best review they'd ever received. You know, it took for him to be hospitalized, physically removed from the body, to be there, incapacitated, to be proved or to be shown that like this thing all works. You might be part of it, but like it does work, like, and it works with or without you. Like I'm due into work here after our fantastic conversation. I have at least 2 broken bones on my foot, I believe. My entire foot's black with a bruise at the minute. So last night I cooked in the kitchen, but I sat down. We have a staffing problem over here, like, you know, trying to get chefs and stuff. So needs must. But like, who does that? Like, what other like who in their right mind would want to do that? You know, and it's like, it's weird because your whole body, not to digress, but your whole body adjusts like medically. Like, so I will not be sick for the entire summer. Like there'll be no ailment that can strike me down for the entire summer. There could be malaria in the town and I won't get it because it's summertime. And see, the first week we get off and we book a flight with the kids and stuff like that and all, and my brain sends my body a message to say, you don't have to be in work. Everything. I'll have leprosy. I'll get everything going. Do you know what I mean? Like biblical plague levels of sick, because my body has now adjusted to be like, summertime, mate, you're not allowed to be sick. Like, you know, my immune system gives it an extra gear during the busy period and then drops. It's like, that's how fucking intertwined this line of work. And I mean, you know, at the end of the day as well, I will make the point that this is just work. I had a few people, I do a little like chat, a little ramble on my Instagram the odd time where I just kind of, I don't know if we're allowed to swear. I essentially just throw shit at what sticks. So I just throw out I call it mental mise en place. So I line up what's going on in my brain, put it out into the ether, and hope that somebody goes, oh, I feel like that sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Just to get that reassurance. And I didn't realize how many people would actually throw it back and say, yeah, 100% did. I had a person message me and they essentially said, look, they're currently off work. They're not sure if they can go back into the kitchen. They're in mental turmoil. Their health's really bad. Their marriage is breaking up and they just can't, they're just really unsure of how they're going to get back into the kitchen. And I wouldn't be the most eloquent with stuff. So I very straightforward sort of put it to them. I said, like, you do know that when we were born, we weren't assigned an occupation. Like, see this whole, like, it's a calling, man. Like, it calls, it's a job. Like, it is a job. And if you're at the point where you're not able to go to work because of your health and your relationship breakdown and your mental health is so bad that you're worried about how you could ever go back in there, don't go back in there. Like, as much as I don't want people leaving this industry, I don't want people leaving this world either. So it's like people are so like, yeah, man, but what else would I do? And it's like, again, I don't want this to be a campaign for quitting the industry, but like the skill set required to work in the high-paced environment of hospitality is applicable in nearly every other industry. Everything, like, you would be the most organized, fastest milkman known to man. Like, honestly, like, there is no thing. People are like, yeah, but all I do is cook, and you're like, no, all you do is like structure and organize things and manage your own shit. Like, there's people who work in offices and cubicles who can't even manage their own shit, and you manage yours with 190-degree oil or 8 tables of demanding customers, or it's so applicable. And it's just about people understanding that when you get to the point where you park outside your work and you take like 4 deep breaths before you go in and you still haven't got out of the car, and then 10 minutes goes by and you still haven't got out of the car, and then your boss is ringing you, and then you finally pull yourself out of the car to get into work, whatever it is, you need to either figure out what it is that's making you feel that way, or you need to get out of Dodge, like, because it's like, it is just a job, like.
Yeah, you're giving yourself a hiding. And I think where we are as an organization is we're working with a growing number of businesses now that are actually curating those environments where people can still have that creativity, the buzz of service, the freedom of expression, but in more sustained terms and more decent equilibrium, a yin yang, if you like, rather than just this is all or nothing. And that's a generational shift. That's an educational thing, because we've never been taught how to, have a 6 to 8 hour shift with time off whilst also running a profitable business. And, many people are going, it's not fucking possible. You can't do it, but you can, and it does work, but there's no one size fits all. I'm conscious, because you've gone and knackered your foot and you're probably already thinking about what you're going to have to prep for today. I'm going to go on to GBM because I saw you light up. I saw your face suddenly glow. And there was this weird moment where you were like, yeah, I've missed my child's birthdays and all this sort of stuff. But GBM was sort of the pinnacle. It is before you now extend your restaurant and take on more covers and more stuff. But it sounds like there was a bit of a confliction there. It was a great moment because it was like a highlight of their career, but also was it challenging?
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, like from a career point of view. So I was just under a year into recovery from gambling. Nearly ruined my whole life. Like I'd never had any interest in gambling ever in my life. And as some sort of coping mechanism I'm not going to analyze it too much because I have absolutely no qualification to do that. I would attribute it as some form of escapism. So like I just go on my phone and it was like, none of this is real. And this is, and like broke the trust of my adoring, amazing wife and business partner, broke the trust of everyone around me, like really, really nearly ruined myself. And then really, really wanted to make steps to prove that I wasn't everything that I had been for quite a long time. Classic piece of shit, as I would describe it. So I got a phone call out of the blue, and it was the production company for Great British Venue, and they'd asked, did you want to do it? And I very much just kind of like, yeah, fuck it, and we'll figure it out afterwards. I agreed to do it. And, I had to say I had so many months to prepare for it. It was just through the summer, so it was super busy in work, really understaffed, didn't get as much time as I wanted, was still trying to work on myself, repair relationships, do all that stuff. And also I probably didn't pick the best time to be doing it. But then my argument was, when's the right time to do that? And when are you ever going to be in it? Just trying to rationalize the madness of the whole thing. And then, went over to do it. I think about 4 weeks. So I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 13. And I haven't controlled it well since I was 13. So it's a pretty good spell. Coming up in 22 years of just awful control. And then in the weeks leading up to Great British Menu, I was like, you know what, I'll maybe take a look at that old diabetes thing. Just so it feels like now's the right time to try and do something about it. And it ended up being really tough on the show with it. I was trying to look after it, and I went through periods of my sugars were crashing. My mental health was buggered through it. But the guy, to be fair, and all credit to them, because they're the most amazing team you've ever seen in your life. I had a conversation with the production team in the lead up to it to inform them, I struggle with my mental health, all this kind of stuff. And their sort of care and consideration throughout the whole thing was phenomenal. It was they couldn't have done enough for me. It was genuinely they sort of taught me a couple of lessons on how to look after myself, But the opportunity to go on the show, I'd watched it for 20 years. So the opportunity to go on it was monumental. Got off the ferry in Liverpool, and it's a drive on down the road to get there, a couple hours drive to get to where it's filmed at. And I remember spending the 2 odd hours driving from Liverpool to the studio, just constantly, just in the car, no radio on, death silence, just going, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing? I could be at home right now on the sofa. That real defeatist attitude straight away, which Northern Ireland is especially famous for. Just why am I, what am I doing? And I remember getting about half an hour away from where it was at and just pulling in at the side of the road, pulling the rear view mirror down, looking into it and going right, pull your fucking head out your arse here. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. And going in and dropping all the stuff off and, and kind of seeing behind the scenes of what it was. And going back to the hotel that night, because we were starting filming the next morning, going back to the hotel that night and just lying, eyes open, coughing material in the bed, just staring at the ceiling for the whole night, just being I don't know what am I going to do here? Going in, and just the whole thing was just mental. It was just really mega. It was it was really tough. Things went wrong for me during the show. Disasters occur. It was probably some of the worst, sort of, in my opinion, the worst cooking I'd done. I just, I'm so hypercritical of myself that I don't really give myself any forgiveness. But in my eyes, it was terrible. So every course that I would do, I would go outside. I would ring my wife, again, my rock. I would ring my wife Rebecca, and I would say, I fucking ruined it. My career's over. What have I done here? This is the worst cooking I've ever done, Rebecca. Look, I'm sure you're more critical than they are, and blah, blah. And I was like, no, they hated it. They would, blah, blah, blah. No, the whole week, this woman's at home looking after both of our children and our business, and I'm ringing her to rage quit every day. I'm ringing her to, she's going well, just maybe, just calm down and and I'm going I fucking feel you, and then going back in and all right, okay, maybe tomorrow will be better. And then got to maybe, I don't know, very unfortunate, one of the guys fell ill who was doing quite well on the show, but it ended up that I had sort of metaphorically and physically packed my bags on the Thursday. I had said, look, I'm fairly sure I'm going home. I'm trailing behind by about 2 points here. And so I'd literally packed everything up and all. And then one of the guys got really sick and he couldn't be on the show. So then I got put into the finals. So I had to metaphorically and physically unpack my bags, which was another challenge, and go into the Friday. I tried my best. I didn't think I'd done very well, but then again, I've already opted out that I'm going home. I was actually almost getting quite excited about the idea of going home, just because it was once I get on that ferry, it's all over, And I won the Northern Ireland region. I went into the judging chamber. So the winner going through for Northern Ireland is, and I was waiting for them to say the other guy's name, and they said my name, and I just shit the bed. I couldn't, I couldn't believe it. I can't, even when I talk about it now, I just it's a real delayed thing for me. I think about a couple of weeks ago, I was in the living room and I just had this big smirk on my face. And Rebecca was like, "What are you smiling about?" And I was like, "Great British Menu was all right, wasn't it?" Like, and she's like, "That was like, we filmed it in October, like, so like I'm just delayed onset." And yeah, so that meant that I had first time on the show, I had won the region. And then I was going back to do the finals with like the who's who of chefs around England and Scotland and Wales. It was just such a whirlwind. And to this day, I say that and this sounds very cliche, but it's genuinely not. And it's a big thing that I firmly stand on. Out of all the success that I had that week, at the end of the week at least, all the, and how amazing that was for me, the biggest accomplishment for me, and I remember thinking about it the whole way through it while I was over there, was I had left my family here and I went over on my own, and we were staying in a hotel, and at the bottom floor of the hotel in the reception, there was gambling machines everywhere. And every day, and I always attributed part of the gambling thing to stress. I always said, I get so stressed out and it's escapism for me, and that's what it is. Well, that was the most stressful week I've ever had in my entire life, and I didn't look anywhere near them. I had no interest in going to them. I was still under a year into recovery, and I remember, and that was the only solace I took every night when I was upset about I didn't cook well enough, or I burnt this, or this happened. But the only solace I took was, you're not downstairs ruining your life. And I came back from that stronger again. After the show, I was stronger again in my resilience that I was never going to put my family or myself through that kind of thing again. Like, and that was the big win from the whole show. Like,
congratulations, man. Because we spoke about habit forming and things like that earlier. And I think if you are struggling with addiction, that's fucking tough, especially when you're away from home as well. Because when you're away from home, you're just yourself. You can be a selfish prick and you can do what you want when you want. You don't have anyone to answer to. You're not going to have to look in the face of your family when you get home. And so to be able to fight that whilst you're away during a time which, especially if you said mentally and metaphorically and also literally had packed your bags and you're like, this is it, I'm done. It'd be very easy just to go in self-destruct mode. So that requires kudos.
Yeah,
well done.
No, I think, thank you. No, I think it's like, and it shows a little bit where my head was at, because throughout my gambling addiction, I would have, to protect myself, because your brain's an amazing like part of your body. Like your brain will like justify any action you want it to. But here, to be fair to you like, my brain was very empathetic to my position. It was Team Stevie the whole time. Like, so. Yeah, so I would have always, through my addiction, I always would have had like outs. I would have created outs for myself where I could say, but like, you only did that because you not remember like that whole disaster with the, it was like there was always a reason why. It's not really your fault though, and it's quite a childish trait, quite an immature trait, but very much one that like I think comes hand in hand with addiction, which is that when in the formative stages of addiction, it's like it's not your fault. And once you get to where I am, and hopefully I don't know if anyone listening will be able to sort of get this as well, but like once you get to a point in recovery where you've created that belief in yourself again, you start to realize that like it's all your fault. It's like you're the person taking the drug, you're the person swilling the drink, you're the person smoking the whatever, you're the person putting the bet on. It is on you, like, and just as much as it's on you when you're doing it, it's on you to stop doing it. And like, once I finished the Great British Menu show, not that this is an anti-tobacco advert, but like, I could have went to the Olympics for smoking cigarettes. I was like, I should have been sponsored. It would have been cheaper if I'd have been sponsored, but I just quit. I quit cigarettes as well. 160 something days cold turkey, because I realized from doing the show and from doing all these things that I have a specific personality type, and I do believe that you can change your personality. You can alter it and curtail it into somebody else. But being the way I am, I figure rather than try and uphaul all that stuff, what I'll do is I'll weaponize it for good instead. So I would be the most stubborn person you've ever met in your entire life. But like, to be stubborn isn't necessarily always a negative thing. Like, if you're standing on principles or you're standing on morals and you're stubborn about, like, you're unwavering on those things, suddenly it's a weapon for good as opposed to evil. So I'm so stubborn that I said I'm never going to smoke a cigarette again. And I refused to be proved wrong. And that was all it took to stop after 15 years of smoking. I'm so stubborn that I said I'll never waste my money or any of the hours of my life gambling again. And I won't, because I've weaponized it. It's a thing. I refuse to be proved wrong. I'm so adamant that that'll not be a thing. And it's like, it seems quite futile, and it seems like quite a soft thing to say. Oh, well, you just decided then, and that's it. Well, it's not that easy for everybody. It's absolutely not that easy for everybody. But I do know that, like, the only way people are going to, especially in this industry with the pressure of it and all, the only way you're going to be able to conquer problems that you have is by taking a step back and looking at yourself and figuring out what makes you tick, what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you, because, like, nobody knows you better than you know yourself. So, like, if you're struggling to go to work because you're depressed, it's like you need to step back and analyze, like what is it that's putting you down there? Like, what is it? And if you can change it, change it. And if you can't, then get away from it. Like, just get as far away from it as possible. That's my little fridge magnet of wisdom for you. I don't know.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
A fridge magnet, that will go on an A3 poster, mate. Like in, it is really profound. I think I was sat there reflecting on my own personal journey whilst you were talking, and unfortunately, I didn't have that skill set that you and I have both developed by going through some really shitty times. But I didn't have that until I was in my early 30s after therapy. Because again, everything happened to me. Everything was everyone else's problem. Didn't know what my core values were or my morality, like you say, or wasn't able to underpin my morals to be able to guide my principles and to guide my actions. And once I found that, all of a sudden I was like, actually, no, everything that happens is my fault. Even if it's someone pulling out on me, it's my fault because I was going too fast, or I should have slowed down, or I should have been more aware of that. And once you switch that around, things don't happen to you. They happen naturally, and you can either fight against that grain or you can go with the flow and go, okay, accept it. All right, that's fine. What can I do within my power of control? But that's something that you have to learn. And we are not ever, there's nothing in the school curriculum system. There's nothing because it's likely that your parents might not necessarily have learned that unless they've been through the same shit times that we have. And the only way you can learn that is by doing that work on yourself, whether that's tackling gambling addictions, looking back at yourself, sitting with your thought processes and analyzing them, and not giving yourself a hard time because you've had a weird thought or because you're feeling impulsive, but actually looking at it and going, okay, but why? Why is that happening? And it's not for me to say it's right or wrong, but just trying to understand and get to know yourself better. And then you're able to change that perspective. And that's graft. That's creativity to a whole new level. But we take it for granted now. But I think there's still a lot of people out there who might be struggling with that. So I guess as a question, what would be your advice in terms of the first port of call? How can people get to that stage where they start getting acceptance, start looking at themselves from a slightly different light and starting to do that work to be able to establish what it is that makes them tick?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I suppose it's the interesting thing about, all the things like wide category we've talked about here, whether it be like a mental health thing or whether it be from an addiction point of view, both are intrinsically linked. So I suppose one and the same, depending on which way you're looking at it. But I think the biggest thing is that, like, see, whenever people, from my very, very learned experience, when you're going through depression or addiction, or, as I said, much more often than not both. Again, from a protective point of view, what you end up doing is you end up taking a step away from everybody who matters, because they are going to be the first port of call to go, hey, you seem really off today, or why are you not doing that? Or, they're going to catch it out first because they know you better than anyone. So the first thing you do is you remove yourself from those people. You do it, either you cause arguments that had no need to be caused so that they give you space. You create a force field around yourself to make sure that nobody's near you. And I think that anyone who is in that position will know exactly what I'm talking about, which is you give yourself different reasons why you're doing it. Oh, I just don't want them to have to get involved. I'm protecting them from the whole thing. You're not. You're just isolating yourself. So you start to isolate yourself. For me, I found that there's a massive thing for me was shame. Shame, because I was, again, like I said earlier, everyone wants to be the hero of their own story. So the idea of you not being the hero of your own story isn't a good idea. It's not something you want to happen. So you'll just edit the story that doesn't happen anymore. I would say to people, first of all, you need to look at yourself and see what you're actually doing. Like, are you distant from people? Are you, becoming unsocial? Or, I was the Robin Williams, shall I say? That was that's the term people have used for me, which is that, like, I would have went into a room and I would have lit the room up, and then I would have left the light in the room, and I would have left the room. Do you know what I mean? I would have left the room in darkness. Like any time I was around people, I would switch it on, and that became so exhausting for me that I just stopped being around people. So it was quite an obvious one for me with other people, because it was like, where's he at? Like, he's always doing all this. Where's he at? And I disappeared. So I reached out to the Samaritans. I think it's a fantastic organization. I reached out to the Samaritans. For my addiction, I reached out to Gamblers Anonymous. I had no idea. So, like, I thought that the Anonymous thing, I thought that this was like Bibles and fire and brimstone, and it was going to be, and I was like, I'm not about that. Like, this is not, I can't, I'm not that way inclined. Totally fine if you are. I just personally am not. But I reached out and I spoke to somebody, and it was the first time that I'd spoke to somebody where I'd been fairly honest about what was going on with me. And it was just like a normal conversation, because they'd heard that and so much worse before, and I had built in my head that my issue was like Everest, like nobody's got shit to deal with, like I've got to deal with. And then you go to a meeting, like you pluck up the courage to go to a meeting, and you sit in a meeting, and quite often coined term is like, if everyone put their shit into the middle of the room, you would take your own shit back straight away. Like, it's like, it's so relative what your shit is, like your problem is the most important problem to you. But if it's comparatively done, there's somebody worse. Like, there's always somebody worse, which is terrible, but it's true. And I went into this meeting room, sat down with these people. It was very nerve-wracking. It was very scary. The first time I went, I felt like I didn't need to be there. Like I felt like, oh, this is for real losers. Like, not aware that I was, in actual fact, the epitome of a real loser, because I didn't even know I was one. And I went in, and it was so unusual, because it was, now, majority of the meetings are men at the minute, but that's just in our personal area. The men and women all go through the same issues. So, and to be honest, it'd be great to see a more diverse crowd at them. But yeah, everyone just kind of talked. And it was like, as a 30-something-year-old man, it was like the first time I'd actually kind of just actually talked to somebody about like how I was feeling, because I think sometimes, I think there's a big thing with like masculinity, and I don't really want to sit down with my wife and tell her how sad I feel or any of these kind of things, because I'm supposed to be some sort of an archetype figure, And then once we started talking in the meeting, I realized that like it's like everyone's just the same. Like we all make mistakes. Like we're all, nobody's infallible. Like, and it was just such a huge progressional step for me. And I realized that like by going there and having someone to check in with, I didn't have to be selfish anymore. I didn't have to put the onus on my friends and family to parent me as well. I could start to parent myself, and I could start to kind of share in an open forum and get advice from people who very much had been through the same thing. And as much as you should be judged for things you do that are bad, there is no judgment in those rooms, because how could you judge when you're complicit in the same crime or whatever? So it was really good. But I do think for people out there that the first thing they need to do is they need to make sure that they're looking after themselves. Like, they need to, whatever they've been doing or whatever's been going on, if it's from an addiction point of view, they've been very selfish, and it's time for them to be a little bit more selfish. Is my attitude, which is you've been willing to prioritize yourself first for a very long time here with drugs or drink or alcohol, whatever it is. So now prioritize yourself one more time and go and get some help from somebody. Just worry about yourself. And that is single-handedly the hardest thing to do, is start that ball rolling. And to use the ball rolling paraphrase, like, once it starts going, you're on the track. Like, once you make that first step, that's it. Like, most of these people have done a lot harder stuff than that before. So,
yeah, exactly. There's something that you mentioned there that's really important, and it's something that I truly believe in, which is, as human beings, we are not perfect. And to be honest with you, you could see even the most successful, the most wealthiest, the most smiliest person in the world, and they still don't have their shit together. We are all we're all just kids wearing adult bodies, just trying to make our way in the world. Yeah. And once you give yourself that permission to fuck up, but also, as you say, be selfish, to go, I need to remedy this and I need to work on this and prioritize myself, then life doesn't seem such a daunting big place after all. And as you say, there's someone out there who's got it 10 times as bad, and it helps put things into perspective. But when you're in that boat, you do think you're the only person, you're the only fuck up on the planet. But it's conversations like this that hopefully connect to people and go, okay, I'm definitely not alone. And there will be, all the listeners we have, there will be a lot of people out there who go, okay, yeah, no, I get this. I never realized that was even a thing. So I appreciate you sharing that as well, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's become a really easy thing for me to do as part of my recovery, is to just like share as much as possible, to emphasize that that's like the key to the whole thing, is like you will not get to that bad place if you let someone know that you're going there. Do you know what I mean? Someone will divert you from it at an earlier stage. There's no point in sitting on the bus until it gets to the last station and then tell the driver that you were supposed to get off at the first one. Do you know what I mean? Like, the sooner you address the issue, the quicker you get to where you need to go, And so, but it's that thing of just like, everybody just needs to look after themselves. And I mean, that's been a big thing as well, just to touch on. Like, I mean, I had spent the 10 plus years in the kitchens. I put aside any sort of physical exercise or any of these things. And I know that it's on every bulletin board and every website, get out there, healthy body, healthy mind. I'm telling you now, like, it is like, see what we do both front and back of house. That is like some shifts. It is like an athlete level of like pressure you're putting yourself under.
Yeah. And it's like, extreme sports.
We're not fueling ourselves properly. We're not hydrating ourselves properly. We're not getting enough like oxygen in our system. And like all of those things contribute obviously to being healthier, but they also contribute to performance. Like your performance, since I've quit cigarettes and I go to the gym 3 times a week, we climb mountains. The mountains is a great one because it's like it's a time for reflection as well, where you're just away from like mobile phones and all that kind of stuff and all. And then there's this great thing about mountains where like they call it a false peak. So when you're going up a mountain, you think you're at the top, and then you go up over the rock and you're like, you fuck. And there's another one. And it's for me, the first time I did a mountain, I was like, this is so relatable. Like this, this thing of like, oh, we're finally there. And then you just go, no, fuck, there's another one, and you have to keep going. And just that like kind of mental resilience to do those things. It's not doable for everyone. Like, I mean, I happen to live in a really lovely, like nature filled part of Northern Ireland. It's great. But like, I do think that like, as exhausted as everyone is and as tired and as hard as it is, it's like if you can put something in there, like it seems really ridiculous and hipster maybe to people listening, but we do yoga with the staff 1 morning a week. And I mean, like, I'm terrible at it. Like, so it's like none of us are yogis, like, but it is like you're in work, but it's not work. Like, it's something that's not work. Do you know what I mean? Just for an hour, on a morning. Usually it's a Thursday, so it's before the crazy weekend comes, and it's just like those are the things you know, like I said, it's a tough industry. It's always going to be really tough. Here's something nice to go with it, or here's something to just, you know, like straighten yourself out a wee bit, and like all of that contributes to you being more able to do your job. Like, and I definitely think this thing of like 40 cigarettes and a pot noodle a day is not like, it is not the diet of someone who's doing like athlete levels of work. Like, it's definitely not. Like, so people need to look after themselves mentally 100%, and then physically they need to do a bit as well. Like, coming from the terrible diabetic who never looked after himself.
But these are lessons learned. Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like that. It's the parent-child fallacy, isn't it? Where your parents will tell you not to do something, or that you should do something, and you'll hear it. But actually, after a period of time, it starts to sink in. You'll be like, oh, I remember listening to that podcast episode where he was talking about this. And it is so right. Like, you wouldn't expect to climb Kilimanjaro having smoked a pack of cigarettes and, as you say, smash down a pot noodle, because you'd be like, that's ridiculous. I'm going at high altitude. I'm going to struggle to breathe. I'm going to be walking for 15 to 20 hours. Of course, I wouldn't eat that. I would have to fuel myself correctly. But working in hospitality is a high performance sport, not just for the brain, but the body, you know, for both elements. So with that in mind, we have to fuel ourselves. We have to look after each other. And there was something you said again about the mountain element, and I'm conscious of time. I really don't want to push you, especially if you've got a bum foot today. So I'll let you go in a moment. But when I was in southwest of Ireland, I did a mountain, which is Mount Brandon. Yeah, second highest mountain in Ireland from sea level. I was going to do the biggest, which was Cartu Hill.
Yeah. And, it's yeah.
Yeah, I was going to do that, and I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. I was doing it solo, no one else with me, and I had to call off on the morning of because it was 50-kilometer-an-hour winds. And I was like, that's too risky, and especially as it's straight up a scree hill up to 1,100 meters. So I took myself up the second highest one instead because there was a bit of shelter. And I remember walking all the way along the path, thinking that I was going to hit the footpath to start climbing the hill. The path ran out, so I carried on walking like an idiot. Didn't have a proper map on me because my phone had died. And I looked up and I'd realized that the path had been following this ridgeline. And so in my head, I was like, I could go back right now. I have to go back to walk up to that path. But the other part of me was like, it's only a 400-meter climb straight up. It's easy. It's fine. Yeah. I remember I went through all range of emotions, internal monologue, sat down about 10 times, bashed out the energy gel that I'd bought ready for the final summit, ate all my food, cried a little bit, talked to a sheep. I was like, thought about turning around halfway up. I was like, what the fuck have I done this for? If I just saved my time and gone back, it would have been easier. But there was something about the entire journey, and which, again, is challenging yourself, is that internal monologue, you start to become a little bit more aware. And I saw 4 people the entire time because the weather was shit. Yeah. And it's Highland, which is beautifully quiet anyway in most places. But there was this mental thing. And I remember I got to the top after thinking about halfway I was going to turn around, got to the top, went and summited, touched the trig point, and then came back down. And I burst out into a fit of giggles. And luckily there was no one around because I sounded like an absolute lunatic. And I was just laughing my head off because I'd absolutely shat myself going up this hill. But also the fact that I did it and I pushed through and I was able to do it. And I proved to myself that I was. And all of a sudden these ideas started flowing and stuff like this. But it's those small moments that actually are away from your normal environments, away from drugs, alcohol, this other stuff that allow you to learn about yourself, which are really, really important. And it is about casting those out, even if it's half an hour worth of yoga.
It's like so there's like an aspect of it where there's like, of course there's an aspect of all exercise where there's endorphins, but like there's a reward that's like long lasting from that. So like not only did you do it and you really enjoyed it, but like you have a story that's quite funny, and it's a story that has like multiple layers of meaning to it, not only just like always bring a phone charger, you know, like there's so many different like layers to it, but that is like, okay, is it the level of endorphins that a bag of cocaine would give you? No, it's not. But is it going to last a lot longer in the grand scheme of what you can do with it? Absolutely. And like, that's where the change is. Like, is it £1,000 bet on black or red? No, it's not. But it's something that you can carry away and you can do something with. And like, I think that at the core of it all, like, that's what it's about. Is it's about like, we as like, especially as hospitality people, like we're so much more capable than we believe we are. We're so hard on ourselves. So many of us go into this industry thinking that it's just like, oh, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just did this. And it's like, well, then bloody do it to like the best of your ability, like, and be a professional about it. Because like what we do is like, I always say to people, it's like, we get people coming to our restaurant and they're in my restaurant for an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes on a table or something like that. And I hopefully will get to meet them because I try and get around as many people as I can. But if I don't, how pure is it that for that hour and 45 minutes, them being happy is all that matters? I don't know them. I have no idea what their story is. We get people in and they're like cancer survivors. We get people in and they're, I'm sure, gangsters. I've no idea. There's all ends of the spectrum come into the business. So it's like, but how pure is it that no matter who you are or what you're about, that we get the opportunity to make their day so much better? And it's like, so inherently at the base of what hospitality is, it's like, it's so pure. It's that thing of like, oh, there's a reason why the word hospital is in hospitality, like, because it's like we are caring for people. And all we need to do after that is we need to start caring for ourselves as well, because we can do it so much better if we look after ourselves.
Yeah, true. Mate, I could talk to you for hours. I could talk, honestly. We still haven't touched upon how you're balancing profits and business ownership whilst also trying to run a business based on moral and principles and things.
I'll give you some.
Yeah?
Because it's really important, dude. It's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I should have asked you, am I compromising your time and adding to your workload? But if you have 10 minutes and you want to
it's such an important topic of conversation. Like it's like, because there's a misnomer with it where people think that like you can either be hardline on your principles or big on your profits, and there's no like mix between the two of them. And like, I mean, my accountant would say there's definitely no mix between the two of them, but I think there is. I think it can. So what we do in our business, which is really different, is we go directly. So we're a seafood-based business. We work as a fishmongers, and then we also work as a seafood restaurant. So we have a retail and a hospitality aspect of the business. Mm-hmm. The core foundation of that was because I found it really weird that like, so in the local town that I live in, there's a petrol station I like to use. Don't know why, but it's not like the other one doesn't do just as good fuel, but there's a petrol station I like to use. So I suppose in some aspect you would say that I had loyalty to that petrol station, which is really, really fucking weird, because I'll go in there and I'll buy 100 quid's worth of fuel and they might say thank you. They usually don't, so there's no actual customer service there. It's just like, I get X and you get Y, right? And that's it. And yet, weirdly, the public have a loyalty to retail. So like, you've probably got a hairdresser. You only go to that hairdresser. When I was growing up, my mum had a butcher's. That was the butcher's we went to. It's still the butcher's she goes to. So we're loyal in that way. And yet what's weird is in hospitality, in my opinion, there is loyalty. There is no loyalty. If you want loyalty, get a Labrador. That's my strap line, because like if you look in your wallet, or if if I look in my wife's purse or my wallet, I'll have loyalty cards for coffee shops with a couple of stamps on each one. It's a flawed scheme, like, because why would I have multiple loyalty cards if it's a loyalty card? So it doesn't really work that way, and it's because the industry is transient. So like, my customer today is somebody else's tomorrow, and that's how it has to be, because to eat in the same restaurant religiously would be, some people do it, and that's totally fine, but it's like it's rare. You want to shop around, you want to try different stuff. But we found that by having a retail aspect to our business, so the fishmongers, I could have you in on a Tuesday and you could buy a couple of fillets of fish for 10, 15 quid. And then I'll maybe not see you for a week. But when I see you in a week's time, you're on a Saturday night for a meal. And that means that we keep a constant bond with each other. It's not 3 months till I see you again for another meal. You were in the week before a fish, you're in this week and you bought a loaf of bread. And so that's how we operate our business. That started because when we opened the business, we signed for the lease for the restaurant, it was the week before COVID hit. And so we weren't able to open a restaurant for 3 years. And so we had to make money to pay the rent. So we had already chatted to the guys in the boats about, like, you know, getting fish and doing all this stuff straight from the fishermen, straight off the boat. And so we rang them up and we said, look, can we get some? Like, we're just going to sell it as a fishmongers, because shops were allowed to open, but hospitality wasn't.
Yes.
And we were a brand new business, so there was no COVID grant schemes, or that we got nothing. Like, there was no money. Thank God there was no money given out, because they all turned out to be disasters, I think. But yeah, we started like that there. And what it ended up doing was it ended up like forging this thing where we realized that, like, we live on an island and everyone has been like sort of, they've had a fractured relationship with fish for a couple of generations now. We live on an island, we're surrounded by sea, we should be eating fish all the time. Everybody wants to eat chicken. It's this weird like thing that's happened. And a big part of it was from an economic point of view, is political point of view, is we gave a lot of our fishing rights away to other people. But what would end up happening was we would catch fish and export it. And then if we wanted fish, we would buy it back off the people we'd exported it to, which then, yes, it's nuts. Which then gentrified fish. It made fish too expensive for an island nation to afford. So you had to be like, you know, well-to-do or having a really special occasion to have fish, which is madness.
Yeah.
So we, from that minute on, concreted into our business that we would always be a fishmongers. So you could always get fish off me for a £5. You can come in and you can spend hundreds of pounds in the restaurant if you want, but you don't have to. And you'll be just as much of a loyal customer as you were before. And then what it did as well was that first couple of years that we did just fishmongers, but we built up like a clientele of people who were guaranteed to want to eat in the fish restaurant. So we stood on principles, and we were still able to like data collect who it was that was going to be wanting to come into our restaurant, what their favorite kinds of fish were. I would sell them fish, and I would talk them through like, oh, this recipe is quite nice, blah blah, and this, oh, that sounds amazing. I wish you could cook it for me here soon. We're opening, so, you know, build up that kind of that marketing campaign that you would pay some business to do for you for a foot. No, we did it all ourselves. You know, husband and wife, mom and pop business, like at the forefront of it every day. And we also educated the customer. They come in and they go, oh, have you got any cod? And I go, no, sorry, no cod. They go, I was really looking for cod. And I would go, well, that's it. So was the fisherman. The fisherman was also looking for cod, and he couldn't get it because this is the way the fishing industry works. But what he did get was some coley. And it's a similar fish. What's your recipe? And I'll tell you if you could use coley for it instead. And so we started educating them and pushing them into the fish that are easier to catch. There's way more of, so therefore it's more sustainable. And then sustainability became everything our business was about, using all of the fish. So like I always say to people, if you want to, when restaurants talk about, and listen, the VAT thing is insane at the minute, and like the price, restaurants are getting crippled at the minute, okay? But do you know where you'll find some of that money? In your fucking bin. Wastage. That's the profits that the HMRC aren't taking, the bin man is. And I'm telling you that now. It's like that
as well, right?
Eh?
There's wastage, average wastage is like 35% or something ridiculous for a restaurant.
We're in the single figures at most, like, and it wouldn't be for food, it would be for like packaging and shit. Like, you know, we use the skin of the fish, we use the meat of the fish, we use the bones of the fish, we use the organs of the fish. There's nothing doesn't get used. And then to avoid wastage even more, obviously when the fish first comes in, we break it down, we sell some of it to the customers. So there's never any left over at the end of the week. So like I don't have a freezer in my business. I don't have, you know, microwaves. We don't have any of that. Like we don't need it. It's all fresh. And there is way more work involved in that. So that's where this whole paradigm of like, oh, you know, is it financially viable though? There is way more work in that. But if you work smart, it makes sense. And if you have principles that you stand by for your business that are unwavering, what it also does is it gives you, so from a chef's point of view, if I have a thing where I say, I only want to use local fruit and veg from farmers and growers around here, and I only want to use local fish, well, I've suddenly given myself a box within to work in, Remember we talked earlier on about like chefs and they're like sort of, or hospitality, and they're sort of, they need structure and they need this stuff. Well, I did that. I made a fence around myself and I said, you can only play inside this fence. So whatever you want to do on a menu, you can do inside this fence. So suddenly I'm not, we aren't a restaurant that like gets the catalogue out and goes, oh, they've got yuzu here from Japan. We could get it imported. And no, we don't. No, we'll use, the wee lady down the road's growing plums and they're quite acidic at the minute. We'll take them and that'll be what we use. We use the things that are around us, and we do it in a way as well where this isn't financially viable. We do it in a way where, like, the people who will bring me in tomatoes that they've grown in their greenhouse and I'll give them a piece of fish for it. Is the fish worth more than the tomatoes? Probably, but I really like the idea of it. Like as much as that's probably me like sinking myself, I really like the idea of like that kind of old school thing of like, you give me tomatoes, I'll give you fish. That bartering thing. Yeah, 100%. But like, and then we also go into the schools. So we do, my wife, Rebecca would do a lot of work in the schools with the kids. Like, this is a lobster. This is a crab. These are mackerel. You should be eating this stuff, because I describe it as Christmas tree farming. So we're planting seeds now that in 20 years' time will be customers. That's what this is about, and it's about getting people aware of what's going on. And I think we have quite a big social media. We're really well known in Northern Ireland, and I think, with those things comes a responsibility, and it's a responsibility to promote things that are good and take away from things that are bad. So, like, do we want to promote farmed fish? No, we don't, because why would we? We've got super fresh, wild, local fish there, and it's it's healthier for people, it's better for people, and that puts us into this. Like, the only thing I would say about it that it does is it puts us into this catch-22 where, like, if there's a really big storm, we can't get fish.
Yeah.
But rather than us being like, oh fuck, well, we look at that and we go, right, that hopefully that doesn't happen. And to be fair, the men and women, I say women as well, because this fish are men, it's fish are women as well. Like, this is a dual industry. There's everybody works in this industry. Like, so shout out the ladies. Like, but like these people are hardy. Like, they will go out. So we haven't ran into that situation where we haven't been able to get anything before. But like, it shows how authentic it is that, like, there's times you'll come to our restaurant and there'll be 3 types of fish and the whole menu will be made of those 3 types of fish. And it's because that's the only fish we could get. Yeah, and it's taking people away from that consumerism thing of like supermarkets where, like, they can go with the Tesco's any day of the week and that thing that they want is always there, and wherever it is, or Sainsbury's or other supermarkets are available. But like, it's about doing that thing where we show people that, like, and this thing of buying local, people say, oh, I would buy more local ingredients, but it's very expensive. And it's like, no, well, it's not. I'll tell you what it is. It's accurately priced. Like, what do you mean? No, but it's dearer than the shop. Yeah, because that's what it should cost. Yeah. So, like, you can go into the big supermarkets and you can get a chicken for less than you pay for a latte.
Yeah, it's not right, is it?
What does that tell you? They're like, lattes are too dear, and I'm like, no, farmers are getting screwed, is what it tells you. Like, the price of lattes does not need to come down; chicken needs to go up. So yeah, we've become sort of very much vocal with that whole side of the business, because I feel that, like, especially now with how on the pulse customers are with like sustainability and recycling and all these things that maybe in the past wouldn't have mattered. See, because they are so on the pulse with it. You would be remiss, you'd be an idiot if you were to run a business that did not have some sort of ethical stance behind what it does and why it does it. Because there's so many options nowadays that people will go to somewhere that is not only doing a great job, putting up really lovely food and really good service and all, but is also contributing something in a positive way to the economy, to the environment, to people's well-being, all that kind of stuff, to the education. And it has to be all those things. And that also gives us other strands of passion for the business. Because to just have the passion to cook a beautiful bit of fish, that runs out after a wee while. Like, you need, so the passion of my kids, going into their school and standing in front of their teacher and talking all about seafood and stuff like that, and all that gets me up in the morning as well. That gets Rebecca up in the morning. The idea of going and working with the community and delivering fish to people's houses who maybe can't get out to get the fish. Like that to me is like, That's what makes you part of the community. And if you're part of the community, your restaurant will never be empty.
Yeah, for sure. And that's become more apparent after COVID as well, isn't it? That sense of connection, that belonging, and that legacy as well. So being involved in the community, but passing that down and passing that ethos down to your kids and to their kids and so on and so forth, so that it becomes a generational thing, then community will support you, irrespective of its size. We've certainly found out from the Burnt Chef project is that if you create a community, then the rest looks after itself.
Everything else follows.
Because take it back to its foundations and where we were 36,000 years ago, it was about community. It was about staying warm, staying dry, and eating. And that's still our core principles, right? It hasn't changed.
No, the rest of the world has, but no, that is inherently what it is. Look after the person sitting beside you, whether it's around a fire or whether it's in your workplace or wherever it is. Yeah, it's about everybody sort of working together. Big community is right.
Mate, thank you ever so much for. I really enjoyed this conversation. I love
this podcast stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, no, it took us a little while, but do you know what? It was worth the wait, and we've run over by a significant amount of time. So I want to thank you for your time, because I know you've got a busy life, busy business, a lot going on. So thank you very much for that. And if people wanted to find you, where could they find you, either online, you and Rebecca, or your lovely restaurant and Fishmonger?
Yeah, so we are Lear Seafood in Korea, Northern Ireland. We're on Instagram at Lear Seafood. I'm on Instagram at Chef Onlyfins, which was a pun. There's only pictures of fish on it, so don't be looking for anything else. And absolute pleasure, man. I think what you are doing with the Burnt Chef project is amazing as well. Like I see plenty of guys over here wearing the merch and doing the stuff, and like you say, it's just about a little bit of openness and people being willing to just sort of say, look, we'll give me a wee hand here for a minute. Can't do it all ourselves. Like, everybody needs to work together. So yeah, hats off to you, man, because it's a big setup you've got there and it's going well. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely bit off more than I could chew, trying to deal with every continent. Going back to what we were saying off air at the beginning, which is, we don't know why we do it to ourselves. We could have just stopped and looked after the local area, but you're on a mission, and when you're on a mission, you've got to see it through. Otherwise, you're just going to sit back and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda. So with that in mind, obviously we've got services for UK, free services for UK, but actually whilst I was over in Ireland, I was chatting to a lot of people and realised how isolated some of those communities are. And so from the 16th of June, we also launch an Irish free phone number and WhatsApp to give people access to financial support and therapy and life coaching and mindfulness coaching and all that sort of stuff as well. So that will come online very, very shortly. But listen, mate, I appreciate your time. Thanks ever so much. And next time I'm over, maybe for IFX, yeah. I'll come and check you out.
Come and see me, man. Absolutely. Thank you very much, brother.
Nice. Have a great day. Yeah.